Hey, welcome back to video number 5. Good job sticking with it. You probably made it past what most people quit on video number 1. So good job with that. And I'm not trying to be a motivational speaker, but you can do anything you set your mind to it as long as you believe you can do it. So in this video, we'll talk about variables. So let's dive right in. I believe here is where we left last time, so I'll just close this terminal and I'll create a new folder here. I'll call it variables and data types. Then inside this folder, I'll create a file there. I'll call it readme.md. Don't mind, these are just my notes that I'll be using, and all of them are found in our GitHub page. I'll just attach the link of our GitHub where you can find the notes. Also, I'll create a file here, a Python file inside my folder. I'll create a Python file. I'll call it var.py to mean variables.py, something like that. And here is where I'll write our code, and I'll open my notes using my Markdown previewer. You can install it in the market. You can just go to extensions and search for Markdown previewer, and you can install this extension that I'll use to view my notes with. So yeah, with that, we can start today's class. So what in the world is a variable? So a variable is something that can store value for us. And the way we create a variable is that we first have to come up with a cool name for the variable, and then we assign a value to that variable. For example, I can come up with a name, let's say age, and I give it the value of, let's say, 26, like that. So wait a minute, what did we just do? So this age here, it's the name of the variable, also known as the identifier. Then this sign here, it's the equal sign, it's called the assignment operator. Then 26 here is the value. So we have a variable called age that has the value of 26. So now every time we say age, we mean 26, unless we change it later. And we'll see why this is important in programming. The place where I said that we can have cool names for variables, I was a little bit lying, because to come up with names, we have some rules that guide us. For example, here are the rules. For example, that the first rule is that a variable must start with the letter. So I can't just say numbers then age. That's an error. I must start with the letter. Like here, I started with the letter A, or I can start with an underscore. That is just fine. So that's the first rule. The other rule is that you cannot have spaces between variables. I cannot say age, then I do something like that. That's an error. It's not allowed. It should be just one word. It cannot be two words. The other thing is that you cannot use a reserved keyword. For example, the examples of reserved keyword, you can see them here. It's like for, while, and class. For example, if I call my variable class, it is not allowed because class is a reserved keyword. And we'll talk more about reserved keyword as we progress with the course. Okay. The other thing is that age and this age, they are not the same. They can have the same value, but they're not the same variable because this age has capital A, this has small a. So in programming, if they have different cases, they are two different variables. I think that is also clear. Also, the one that I forgot is this one, that you can follow this with digits, no problem. For example, if you start with, as long as you start with the letter, you can put some digits there, and there is no problem with that. So those are the only rules that guide us when creating variable names. If you are coming from another language, you are aware about initialization and declaration. For example, in languages like C, you have to do something like int a, then you say something like, or let me just use age. You do int age, then something like age is equals to 26. So this is called it's called declaration, where you declare a variable, then later you initialize it. But in Python, we don't have this. In Python, we just write the variable and the value in one line. And if you don't need to explicitly declare a variable, because the declaration happens automatically when you assign a variable. So that is how we do it in Python. But if you are not aware with other programming language, just ignore what I just said and let us continue. The next thing that we learn today is a data type. And a data type defines the type of data that can be stored in a variable. So let's look at some examples. Let me start with numeric data types because those are the ones that we use in this example. So in numeric types, you have some things like integers and floats. For example, in this variable here, age, this age is of type integer, int, because its value is 26, and 26 is just an integer. An integer is just the integer in maths. Integer is just a number that does not have a floating point. And the other type, numeric type, is the float that can have a floating point. For example, if I put here point something, this second variable will be a variable of type float. I think that's how you get. Then there's another type, it's called Boolean. So Boolean represents whether something is true or false. For example, I can have a variable, I'll call it is. I can put an underscore. Let me just put an underscore because I've learned about the rules. I can put a variable here, I say is subscribed. Then I can say something like false. So this is subscribed is a variable of type Boolean. And I've said that Boolean represents either true or false. So variables of type Boolean can either have true or false. They can only have two values, either true or false. And in that case, if you haven't subscribed, you can just subscribe so that the value of is subscribed can be true. That is it for this video. And variables and data types are very important in the world of programming. And I tried to make it as simple as possible so that you can understand it easily. So we'll continue learning as we progress. We'll have more concepts as we progress. And just to summarize, a variable is something that can store a value for us. And a data type defines the type of value a variable can hold. That is it for this video. Peace out. Oops, before I forget, all the code and the notes are available in the GitHub repository. I'll just put the link in the video description. Now for real, peace out.